All right, everybody, what is going on? Episode 10 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'm Josh at the Real Fantasy TL. Actually, Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I do that all the time with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex. Bill, how are you doing?
Doing well. Exciting weekend of games. Some surprises, and it was cool to see KC come flying back against Houston. Unfortunate to see Lamar Jackson fall, but it's tough for guys like that to, when the offense is built that way, for them to come back from like a big deficit.
Right. Well, I mean, there weren't any big surprises. I mean, I think we all had the Titans expected to win, and we all predicted that Kansas City would go down by 24 points and then come storming back to score 51. I mean, that's what all the analysts had predicted. So no big shocks there.
Yeah, true.
So we have a lot to go over today. So we're just going to get into it. We'll start with a little bit of news. Not too much going on. We did find out that Kevin Stefanski has been hired as the head coach in Cleveland. I think obviously you're buying all your Browns. I think people were buying Browns before this came down. I think that this might heighten value just a little bit because we also knew that Robert Saleh was also being considered for that job, the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator. So with an offensive mind getting in there, I guess there's a small bump, but I think both you and I were touting that, this is the time to buy low on Browns and get Baker in your super flex leagues. If you can still buy low on Odell, buy low on Odell, get your Jarvis Landry shares, all of that. Any thoughts about Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland?
Fantasy wise, I'm not really sure it changes too much. But it's interesting. It's just funny how fans react. Like, there's so many people thinking that Stefanski's, he's not a great hire for the Browns. Like, Browns fans that I see, like, they're not happy with it, or that's just unexciting. But they were so excited when Kitchens was hired last year,
Right.
So it's like sometimes just having like a solid, good head coach is, like, who was excited about Tomlin when he was hired?
Right.
There's a lot of players or coaches like that it's not the sexy pick, but they're just good head coaches, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, he's he's shown that he can be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And this is an interesting hire, especially because it seemed that he was the guy that the front office wanted to hire as the head coach, and it looks like Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the team, kind of vetoed them and ended up hiring Freddie Kitchens anyway. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe the front office was right and it was just a year too late on hiring him. But that should be interesting. And then the only other piece of news, and normally we keep it fantasy related, and I guess in a way it could be fantasy related if you're playing in IDP leagues, but Luke Kuechly retires. It was a big shock. I saw it yesterday. Someone tweeted it, and I actually thought it was I thought it was a troll account. I was expecting to see, the Adam Schefter, with the fake blue check mark next to it, or the fake picture of Adam Schefter. But after doing very brief search, found out that it was for real. It's a shame because Luke Kuechly is one of the great players, in the league, and at such a young age. But obviously he's looking into his health, and he's looking into what he can do in the future. I looked it up yesterday. I think he's made about $63 million in his career. So retiring at 28 years old isn't as hard when you have that much money in the bank. But most importantly is his health. And if he felt like this was the time to get out, nobody can question his judgment. And I also wouldn't be shocked to see him in a analyst or a broadcasting position somewhere. Really well spoken, really intelligent, and I think he would add a lot. He could even be I think he may even have the ability to be a Tony Romo type analyst on the defensive side of the ball, and just dissecting plays and spitting them out so that the normal fan can understand them and really understand what's happening on the field. Bill, what about Luke?
Yeah, it didn't really surprise me. He's been getting knocked silly at least once a year, like for the last 3 years. I mean, you're the middle linebacker. You're hitting somebody every play, and like your body, guys. We're gonna see this happen more and more frequently. Not even necessarily due to concussions, but guys make so much money now.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to that second contract and you're making the big bucks, you might not even play out that contract once you make a certain amount of money, just because it's not worth playing into your 30s and beating your body up. Right. And I think that's going to be way more common as as these guys keep making more and more money.
Yep.
And it's just not worth it and add the money to, if you have a history of head injuries, that's
right.
Why would you continue to play, especially if you have a family? And also, if middle linebackers, it's very common for those guys to end up, being the captain on defense. And right. So those guys oftentimes make good coaches as well. So
yeah,
if he wanted to, he could head that direction, and become a, defensive coach and work his way up that way. I haven't really heard him speak too much, so I trust you that he'd be a good announcer. Can't be worse than Booger.
Nobody can be worse than Booger,
except for Witten. That's your homerism.
He might be stiffer than Booger, but worse, I don't know about that. So we got through the news, and I mean, Twitter's an awesome place. There was so much going on, so many tweets. It was hard to pick which ones to put on, because there were a lot of good ones. But we're going to start here. The Bauer Club FF at the Bauer Club. Who do you see as a buy low candidate early in the offseason? Bill, you have 3 guys, and as I was looking at the show sheet, I saw all 3 guys, and I was like, yeah, like all of these guys. So who's your first guy? Who's your first buy low?
So the first buy low is Cooper Kupp. He just seems to be like he kind of lost some sparkle from earlier in the season when he was just blowing up, and right. Was wide receiver 1 area. He's still putting up double-digit games like for the rest of the year, but I think people are underweighting his, second half of the season and thinking that his performance dropped substantially, and it really didn't. And with the fact that there's a good chance that one of the wide receivers is going to get cut this offseason, that's just going to, solidify his volume that he's already getting.
Right.
So, and I just think that, you could get him for probably less than what his performance is.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to kind of steal a little bit from you here. I actually think this should extend to just about everyone on the Rams offense. They were perceived to be underwhelming this year. They had some games where they didn't look like their high-powered offense of old. But, we've talked about some polls that we've seen concerning Jared Goff. If you're in a super flex, reach out to the Jared Goff owner. See what he's looking for, because he had a top 15 season, but people are treating him like he had a top 25 season. It's kind of crazy. Brandon Cooks got banged up this year, and we talked about somebody might get cut. He might be the guy who gets cut. Dude, I mean, and I don't know what his cap stuff works out to. He just signed a long-term contract that might not actually be feasible for them in their salary cap right now. But, if you look it up and you see that it's going to cost the team $30 million and, dead cap, they're not going to cut him. Buy Brandon Cooks, buy Robert Woods, buy Cooper Kupp. You might not be able to buy the tight ends because they have some shine on them. But, yeah, I think a lot of guys on the Rams offense can be bought for way less than you would have been able to this time last year.
Yep, I think that the person that is most likely to be cut is Woods, just based on the contract situation and his, he's the oldest.
Right.
And as for tight ends, Everett might not be a bad guy to try to pick up. Higbee blew up at the end, but people always seem to forget the first half of the season kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Everett was doing exceptionally well before he got hurt. So, it's always probably going to be hit or miss. And maybe if they, if Woods gets cut, they move Kupp a little bit outside, and then you just have two tight ends play the slot and the tight end position. And then that'd be pretty fun to watch, actually.
Yeah. That would be real interesting. So, the next guy you have on your list, I flip-flopped on since probably November. So, I want to hear what you think about him.
So, Christian Kirk, it's just a matter of he's so, he's young. He's the number one in a reasonably high volume offense. And it seems like his price isn't crazy high. Towards the end of the season, he was banged up. And so there's a few games in there that were quasi stinkers. And I just think, like, for if you were to trade a pick for him, I think you could probably move a, mid-late first round pick for him, and you're getting a number one wide receiver on a pretty darn good offense.
Yes, I only have one share of Christian Kirk, and I had a trade offer in that league. It was Christian Kirk, a first, a second, and a fifth for Zeke Elliott, and I didn't take the deal. And I mean, me, I love some Zeke.
Wow.
I told the guy, I think it's a fair trade, but giving up the first round 2020 asset, knowing what it would end up becoming, just in value, I knew, the value of these picks was going to become astronomical. And having a real deep faith in Christian Kirk as the one on an offense that wants to throw the ball, 70 times a game if they have the opportunity to. I wanted to keep Kirk as well. And then, now that we're getting into this part of the season and we're starting to see mock drafts and we're starting to hear rumors and rumblings in the bushes, it seems like a lot of people are mocking, Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb to Arizona. And that kind of scares me a little bit, because if they still have all of the wide receivers they drafted last year, Larry Fitz is coming back, plus Christian Kirk, plus a top 10 wide receiver pick. Are there enough balls to go around to get Christian Kirk enough to be a viable fantasy player? So that's my fear. But this is a buy low. So if someone is willing to give you is willing to trade to take your 112 and give you Christian Kirk, yeah, and we always say those are the deals that you need to explore. Sometimes you just need to go to a guy and go, 112 for Christian Kirk. What do you think? That guy probably won the league. He's like, wow, I'm getting a young asset. Yeah, or yeah, I'm getting a 2020 first round pick. And all I have to do is give up Christian Kirk. I don't, and he has the same fears that I just talked about. And then Arizona turns around and they draft an offensive lineman because they sure need, more than one, but, or they go ahead and they draft, someone who maybe, they draft another player that fell, defensive player that fell because they need help on defense as well. So, yeah, I like that buy low. And even though I've been flip-flopping on it, I think if you can get them for the right price, that's a move you need to make. And then your last pick is someone that I've been secretly holding close to my heart and hoping that information like this doesn't leak out into the world. But you have as the third guy on your list, Will Disley. And I think that's a great pick. The guy has dealt with injuries the last couple of years, and we get that and it stinks. But when he's been out on the field, man, he has been, damn near unstoppable. Guy gets catches, the guy puts up yards. He can get into the end zone, and the only thing going against him now is health. And if you find someone who has rostered Will Disley for the last 2 years, they've probably felt the pain. And that might be a guy that you can get for a lower rookie pick, or even maybe a developmental type player. They may just want to get rid of him to get something and not deal with the injury risk. But yeah, Bill, Disley, I love it. I don't know if you have more to add about it.
Yeah, I mean, so he played 6 games this year, had 260 yards, 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, prorated, that's, let's say, 600 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe he doesn't quite do that. I mean, the 600 yards is pretty attainable. Yeah. And let's say 8 touchdowns. That's a pretty darn good tight end. And he I just drew a blank.
Well,
go ahead.
And here's the thing. Here's what I also like about Disley. Seattle's going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch during the offseason. Both Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, late in the season-ending injuries. Yeah, I've heard things that say Chris Carson should be back by training camp. We'll see what happens with that. But if they don't hit the free agent market hard for a running back, possibly because they don't have anyone, and maybe their first running back pick in the draft isn't until the 4th or 5th round, maybe this all of a sudden turns from a team that likes to pound the ball to a team that has to pass more because they have Tyler Lockett, they have DK Metcalf, they have Will Disley. And if that happens, like you said, it prorates to 610. Well, what if it's 808?
Yeah,
you're talking about probably a top 5 tight end, top 6 tight end, and at a position that's so shallow. I mean, if you can get him for a low second or a high third, why not?
Well, and here's what I was actually going to say, where my brain went numb. He is an ADP for January 159th. So, I mean, that's like, what, late 3rd round pick, something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, to potentially, even if you only get him for half a season, I mean, you're getting good production from a tight end, especially if you're in a tight end premium league. you're getting great production for nothing.
Right.
So it seems like a no lose move to me.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw that on the show sheet, I was a little mad because Will Disley is a guy that I've been undercover, low key, trying to get in all of my leagues because I think the guy has immense talent, and I mean, if he can stay healthy for 16 games, I mean, I think he's almost a lock top 5 tight end, and having one of those guys as all of the Darren Waller owners can attest to this season, having a top 5 guy that you spent barely any capital on is super valuable. So I only had one guy, and it's a guy that I've been touting a lot. Let's see what the David Johnson owner is looking for. I know you're probably going to run into a lot of resistance in most scenarios where the David Johnson owner doesn't want to, get what his current worth is. That guy maybe spent a first round pick on him in a startup or, traded a bunch of assets to get David Johnson and now wants to get, he doesn't want to get pennies on the dollar. He wants to get at least a quarter. And, but, you might have a guy that doesn't want to deal with all of the injury issues and all of the problems that kind of are associated with David Johnson. And if someone is, again, looking to give up a late second, a third round pick for David Johnson, or maybe a third and, a next year, a 2021 third, make that trade because, first of all, I don't think he will be in Arizona next year. I think they're going to try to trade him. They're probably going to eat a lot of his contract, but get a pick back. You've talked about this before. What if he goes to Tampa Bay, reunites with Bruce Arians, who obviously knew how to use the guy? That was proven from Arians' time in Arizona. What if he goes to what if he gets traded to the Chargers, let's just say, and he teams up with Austin Eckler kind of to take over for what Melvin Gordon was doing? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of what ifs, but I think he's a guy that if you can get him for cheap, he could return, even if he returns top 24 value for you, I think you're winning.
What's max you're willing to pay for him?
Probably 2.7, 2.8 is probably max that I'm willing to pay for him. I mean, again, I have to inherit now. I have to inherit the injury risk that David Johnson has become, and so I don't want to give up, really a top 25 pick to assume that risk. So, yeah.
Okay,
Or
so
I'm sorry.
That's like third round.
Yeah, sorry. My math is bad.
Like top 20?
Yeah, top 20. Like that's
Okay.
kind of, I don't want to give up that top 20 pick, and this may even be a time where if you're sitting at 211, 212, you were in the championship. You may want to sit on this for a little bit and let your pick gain a little bit more value, then try a move like this. Because I think by the time April comes, 212 is going to get you a lot more than 212 has been able to get you in the past.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like I have a few shares of DJ, and there's like certain teams I have where I'm kind of like in that. Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe going on to rebuild and that sort of thing, and I haven't fully made that decision yet but I do have some older assets, and I'm thinking, okay, if I get a decent offer for DJ, maybe that's what kicks me into that rebuild.
Right.
And I don't think I'm quite willing to move it for the price that you're like what you're willing to offer right now.
Right.
So like I'm probably in the 204 range of where I would need to be to move him. And so like my thought is like let's say we get to the draft and now somebody's like offering me like a 210, 211. I'm just holding on to him because now I'm only a few months away from the season.
Right.
And I may as well wait till he starts putting points up again. And, what's the big deal if I lose half a round because he doesn't perform right away?
Right.
And so, that's tough. I think, if you do want him and you believe in him and you think he can, you're on the upswing and you want to try to hit on a player that's, shown that he could get the points and, maybe you got to pay up a little bit more. But you might find somebody that's willing to flip them for, a mid-second. And so it's obviously worth trying. And obviously you might only have 1 second. So,
right.
If your second's a 205 and you think that, his upside's greater than anybody you can select in the draft or that you can trade for with that pick, I could see making that move. It's just, it's hard when you've had a player that has scored as many points as he has in a season. If somebody's had him for 2-3 years, it's hard for them to move him for like a late second.
Right.
So I like him as a buy for sure. And I think if I was like kind of on that cusp of being like a contender, I'd definitely be willing to fork out a mid-second for him.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing about David Johnson, kind of just to wrap this whole thing up. I think David Johnson is one of those players that the owner of David Johnson is probably going to want more than the potential buyer of David Johnson is willing to give up. And it's for the reason you outlined. We've seen David Johnson be a top 5 guy. We've seen it with our eyes, and we've seen the talent on the field. And we talk about recency bias enough, but I think what a lot of people don't talk about enough is kind of, and I don't have a fancy name for it, but the bias of knowing what that guy has been and knowing that the player still has the ability to maybe reach those heights again, even though there's been injury history, even though they've gotten a little bit older. I mean, people were doing it with Shady McCoy his first few years in Buffalo. Well, Shady McCoy has been a top 5 guy all these years. He's just going to go to Buffalo and continue to be a top 5 guy. And he had good years, but it wasn't the same with Shady. And I think that we're kind of in this paradox right now with David Johnson along the same lines that, especially if he gets traded to Tampa Bay, people are going to, he can be good again.
Time to move him.
Yeah. So, it'll be interesting, but take a look at all those guys and see. You never know when an owner is just frustrated with what's occurred and you get a deal because you were the guy who checked in and asked about it. So the next one here on the show sheet, Mike at Lanumati 11. Lamuminati. Oh, I can't talk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. At what point do we sell elite wide receivers to recycle for more or younger pieces? Guys like Hopkins, OBJ, Devontae, etc. Granted, they're only 26, 27 years old, and 30 is usually the red flag. But at what point / age do we sacrifice elite production for a newer, shinier toy? And what value should we shoot for? Also, who would you consider exceptions to the 30-year-old cliff rule? So this was an interesting one, and we were talking about this before we jumped on live. And I kind of say, I kind of said to you that I probably have, if these guys are a part of my team, I'm probably keeping them till the wheels fall off unless someone just offers me a ridiculous deal because, you know, yeah, 30, 30 is the red flag, but I mean, what are we trading Hopkins for right now? What are we trading Julio for right now? Devontae Adams. I mean, we're not just trading these guys for a first and a young and up and coming player. These are guys that produce every year, that are elite every year, and don't have the volatility that running backs have. So I'm probably the worst person to ask about this because I probably say, unless obviously you're in a full rebuild and you have one of these guys and you just kind of go, hey, looking to trade Hopkins, willing to listen to all offers and kind of see if someone will give you a lot of pieces in order to rebuild your team. But Bill, what do you think about trading the proven wide receivers for pieces?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when you're building a team, those are the guys that you're trying to get onto your team. So if you're at all a contender, that's not somebody I'm moving, regardless of age. Uh, if it's a rebuild, of course, you can move those guys because you want to break it down to as many, upside pieces as you can get. The only time I start to consider moving those guys is if they start to show, that they're getting more injuries. Every year they're banged up and missing games, for soft tissue issues and that sort of thing. Like I said before we started, T.Y. Hilton's a big concern for me. The year before he had a couple, he got banged up a couple times one year, and it was Lamar Jackson. It was last year. I offered T.Y. Hilton, or 2 seasons ago, T.Y. Hilton and a third for Lamar Jackson. Lamar hadn't been playing, all that. And so I actually overpaid for Lamar at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just somebody I wanted to move off my team, and it was kind of, we know what happened with Lamar. But
of course,
those are the kind of guys I get a little nervous about. Small speed guys, those are a concern for me because those are the guys I'm more apt to move, just because I get worried about their speed.
Right.
But I mean, it's all based on value. Yeah, if you're always making moves to increase value of your roster, 26, 27, 28, that's the ages you're going to want to flip them for other assets.
Right.
But you can't always just be trying to build roster value. At some point, you have to be playing for fantasy points. And so those are the guys that are going to be on my roster, until probably, like you said, until the wheels fall off. And, I have Julio on a team that's been on my team for 8 years. And, at this point, he's never leaving my team.
Right.
Because then you get to the point where because when you hit 28, your value starts dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to do? Like, am I going to move Julio for 110? Like, what's 110 going to do that Julio, Julio's can win me a season? So, yeah, it just depends how you play the game. And I mean, I think too many people try to play the value game all the time, and then they wonder why they don't win leagues.
Right.
And that's right there's why.
And don't get us wrong. This isn't a never trade situation. You never trade these guys. I traded Devontae Adams on a team this year. I had a team. I thought they were going to be good. They were not. And I traded Devontae Adams for DJ Moore. I traded Devontae Adams and Sterling Shepard for DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, a first and a second. And,
There you go.
that's a trade that I said, okay, I'm getting a for sure up and coming young wide receiver in DJ Moore. I'm getting DK Metcalf, who is kind of burst onto the scene, and I'm getting a first, which I know the value is going to just explode, and I can turn that first into something else. So it's not that these trades never should happen, but you kind of need to get good value.
What was the state of your team in that league?
The time I made the trade, I was 3-6.
So you're kind of in that your mindset, at least at that point in time, was okay. I'm playing for next year.
Yeah, and I, it's funny because I made that trade, and I also traded Nick Chubb. I mean, I drafted Chubb, Juju, Devontae Adams. Thought those three guys were just gonna, carry me to championships. I had Dak on that team in a super flex. I thought Jared Goff and Sony Michel were going to be better than they were. They weren't. And I knew at that time, I said, hey, listen, yeah, Devontae got injured and Juju could get Big Ben back next season. But if I can get good value, which in that trade, I got good value. I mean, I got a first, a second, and two good young up and coming receivers for pretty much Devontae Adams. I mean, Sterling Shepard was thrown in there, but with all of his concussions, I didn't even know if he was going to play anymore. So I kind of, he was just a throw in that the other team asked for. And with those trades and the pieces I received for Nick Chubb, I actually ended up sneaking into the playoffs with the last spot and ended up with 3 first-round picks in 2020. So, not only did I kind of improve on my standing for 2019, but I moved into 2020 with a lot of extra picks, which is not a bad thing to have. So, we're talking about wide receivers. When do you trade elite wide receivers, and, what should you kind of be looking to get for them? I think we can both agree that this year Chris Godwin was an elite receiver. So we have a question from Dynasty Football 24/7 at 24/7 Dino. Which side, the 101 or Chris Godwin? To me, it was not a hard decision to make. I responded with a GIF of Chris Godwin. Bill, you taking the 101 or are you taking Chris Godwin?
I'm taking Godwin. Is this was it Superflex?
Let's see. I don't think it was mentioned.
Okay. Let's just assume one QB.
It was, yeah.
So that's one of the running backs. It's the running back that falls into the best spot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take Godwin. I mean, there are concerns about Godwin, whether he's going to, the offense is going to be as prolific as it was this year. But I mean, he was pretty damn good all year. And I mean, he had a couple stinkers, but overall, I mean, wide receiver 2, I think, for the season. So hard to give up a top, let's even say top 10 wide receiver for the 101. I mean, that's what you're hoping to draft, is somebody of that level.
Right.
So nah, I'm not taking the pick.
And this was interesting because I responded, and then Dynasty Outhouse responded and said, hey, this sounds like it would be a good podcast topic. And we'll talk a little bit more about Outhouse later. But in this poll, the 101 wins it with 51% to 49% for Chris Godwin, which I mean, we talk about this every week, and every week we see the increasing value of these picks. It, and obviously Twitter polls aren't always the most accurate thing in the world, but to see that even if you want to say it's not 49% of the people, but 45% of the people would take the 101 over Chris Godwin. I think every person with the 101 right now should be shopping around. And I'm not saying make the trade, but see if someone is going to give you Chris Godwin for the 101. See if someone's going to give you Odell Beckham for the 101. See, I've seen polls 101 or Dalvin Cook. See if someone will give you Dalvin Cook for the 101. The price of these picks has just it's grown astronomically even from this time last month. I can't imagine what the 101 will get you the week before the NFL draft. It might be able to get you Saquon and Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it's insane to me. And if you hold the 101, your team probably wasn't very good. I would be shopping that thing around and trying to get just a package that, I mean, I think by the time the NFL draft comes, we're going to be seeing Saquon level deals. When Saquon was coming out and Saquon was the for sure 101, I think we're going to be seeing those type of deals to get the 101 by the time the end of April comes around and we're looking at the NFL draft and we know where Joe Burrow ends up and where Tua ends up in Superflex and where Swift and Dobbins and Taylor and Etienne and Judy end up in 1 QB leagues. It's going to be insane to see what these picks are going to, what these 101s are going to end up fetching teams. So got another one here, and this is from John Heyer at The Real Ethiopian. Melvin Gordon and Kerryon Johnson or the 101. Bill, we'll go with you first and see what side of this deal you want.
That's tough. I think that I want the pick. I mean, gosh, like I'm not super sold on Kerryon anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he's going to end up being a guy that they're going to draft somebody, I think maybe this year just to complement him, or they're going to sign somebody that's going to be a little bit more, of a 1-2 punch type guy with him.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously a little fragile, and so he concerns me. Melvin Gordon's an unknown. So I think I actually picked the Melvin Kerryon side on this poll. But kind of after thinking about it, I think I'm going with the pick. I think the value is probably on the players. But I don't think you can move Kerryon for really anything right now. And Melvin, nobody's buying either. Those are guys that you'd have to hope that during the season, one of them blows up. And then if both of them kind of are status quo, I think I'd rather have the, young rookie. Although Kerryon's only 22 years old right now, which, I mean, he can still blow up. But,
right.
Those knees are starting to concern me a little bit.
Yeah, so it's funny that you saw this poll as being close, and not funny, but it's interesting because to me, I felt that the Melvin Gordon Kerryon side was the obvious winner. We have two guys. Yes, Melvin Gordon's an unknown. We don't know where he is going to end up. I have a feeling he is going to end up in a good spot for him.
Okay.
But that's a feeling. There is no fact in that. Nobody's jumped out. Free agency is still 2 months away. You know, um, and I actually agree with you. I think the Lions, either in the draft or in free agency, are going to get a secondary back to lessen the load on Carrion. But I think that's actually going to help him, not hurt him. First of all, I think it'll allow him to play more games, be less injured. Um, and that's always a good thing because if you can get 14 games out of Carrion instead of 8, I think no matter how you slice it, he's going to be better for fantasy. And I still think, I mean, I know Melvin Gordon held out, but considering he held out, he still had a really good season. I think that he still has a lot left in the tank, and I think wherever he ends up, he is going to get himself into that RB1, barring injury, that RB1 territory. So to me, I feel that the Gordon carry-on side, or the Melvin Gordon carry-on side, should be the better side.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, as we said, I think by the time April rolls around, you're going to be able to get a lot more for the 101 than Melvin Gordon and Kerryon Johnson. So, take that for what it is. But that's just my thoughts on the situation.
So I just looked up the ADP and right now for January, and Melvin Gordon is number 34, and Carrion is 39.
Wow. Okay.
So that seems really high to me. Because I'm just trying to think, like, what would I pay for Carrion? And I don't think I pay anything higher than like 108 for him.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure there are people throwing out trade offers right now, and the first number in that pick is 2 something.
Yeah, and like I'm actually looking up on the Dynasty Trade Finder from DLF current trades and or most recent trades, and Carrion for a second was a trade.
Yeah.
Carrion, Robbie Anderson, Akeem Butler for a first.
Okay.
Let's see. Carrion and a third for a first and a second. Carrion for Evan Ingram. Carrion for Tyler Higbee. So it looks like, a first and a second, probably late first, late second,
right?
Kind of area. And then what do you pay for Gordon?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think you can part with Gordon, for anything, I mean, what, Gordon 107, 106, 107?
Yeah, I was thinking like 105-ish.
Okay.
But then that's 105 and 108. Are you moving, if you have the 101, are you moving them for 105 and 108?
I think that's a deal that you might, and I say might, be able to get done now. I probably have to add something to that. but that's,
so, I mean, value-wise,
right now
probably
pick.
pretty close, right?
Yeah. And the poll actually reflects that, saying that it's close. It was 55-45, so it wasn't a slam dunk one way or the other. But I mean, I can't wait to do more of these and see more of these. What's the 101 going for every week? Because I think that price is just gonna skyrocket. I mean,
so I just looked at a Melvin Gordon trade. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
It was the 109. Yeah, where is it now? The 109 for Melvin Gordon in the third.
The 109 for Melvin.
And that trade was 3 days ago.
Okay.
And it's not a super flex. So I mean that's the 9th pick.
Okay.
So that's gosh, like so maybe I was overstating it with 105. Like 10 107 and 108.
Yeah.
I mean that's crazy. I mean it's almost like, you know, everybody says don't buy running backs this time of year, but look at like the deflated values of these running backs. Like if there's somebody you really believe in, you could probably get them for a good discount. You know,
yeah,
even around draft time.
And you said carry on for a second. I mean, look, I you know, I listen to a bunch of people. You listen to a bunch of people. We've all heard the same thing. This class is super deep. This class is, you know, got a bunch of guys. This, you know, this class, you know, so on and so forth. But are you telling me at, you know, at pick 16, pick 17, you can guarantee that you're going to draft a guy that can do what Kerryon Johnson's done in the league? And don't get me wrong, Kerryon Johnson is not going to the Hall of Fame as of this point in time, but he's proven the ability to be able to do things in this league. And, you know, we don't know who this, you know, and you're trading this pick now. There's still a few days until everyone has to declare.
Right.
If a couple of guys that we thought were for sure going to declare decide they want to go back, and we've had quite a few guys already that we thought were a lock to be in this class turn around and go back to school. I mean, all of a sudden, you know, if you're, you know, 204, 205, that 16th, 17th pick, and you trade, and, you know, you got that for Kerryon, and now you're looking in the real, maybe high end, real excited guys end at 14. you might be out of luck, you know.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, I can't wait to see more of these trades that involve picks, because it's going to be crazy. So we got one here. Now this is what to do with the 101. So this is from Dynasty Questions at Dynasty Question. Who are you taking at 101 in hashtag Superflex, hashtag Dynasty? DeAndre Swift or Joe Burrow? You are our quarterback expert, our quarterback guru. So I want you to go first on this one.
It's pretty easy to me. If you're going to limit it to DeAndre Swift or Joe Burrow, there's no question it's Joe Burrow. I don't know. Like, these kind of questions are it's so difficult because you just don't know. Like, there's so much information that's going to come out over the next 3 months. It's so difficult. Like DeAndre Swift specifically, I don't know where he's going to get drafted. I think he's the best running back. We know Joe Burrow is the number 1 pick.
Right.
So, like, I mean, it's hard not to go with Burrow just because of the unknown. So, I'm sorry.
that was funny.
So yeah, Joe Burrow is no question my pick there, just because, like, I mean, it could very well be J.K. Dobbins or another one of those running backs that's the top running back in a great situation. So that now, do I take Joe Burrow over? Is Joe Burrow the number 1 pick? That's another question. And I still think the answer is yes. Just because anytime you can get a 101 quarterback on your roster, you got to in Superflex. If it's a 12 team or more, like if it's a 10 team, I could see taking the top running back. Or if you're just like loaded with quarterbacks and you're really, you know, and you're really short running backs, then I could see taking the top running back. But I'm not gonna. at this point in time, I'm taking the quarterback 99% of the time.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, in a super flex, it's Joe Burrow. I mean, I don't see a situation. I don't care in a super flex how stacked I am at quarterback. I could have Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, and Russell Wilson, and have Matt Breida as my running back one. I'm still taking Joe Burrow because you know what? I can flip one of those other guys for a running back plus. And it's, you know, you said it, we don't know where DeAndre Swift is going to end up. We just talked about this. We both think that at some point Detroit is going to bring someone in to help Kerryon Johnson alleviate. What if that's DeAndre Swift at the top of the second round? What if they go, oh man, we can have a DeAndre Swift, Kerryon Johnson backfield and dominate with those two guys? I mean, for the real NFL, it's probably a really good pick, and it's probably something that would help that team out immensely. But for fantasy, DeAndre Swift on the Lions doesn't move the needle. DeAndre Swift in, let's say, Atlanta, where he's sharing time with Devonta Freeman. Yeah, it's good for the team, but it's not. It's not moving the needle for fantasy. So, yeah, I think it's Burrow. I think it's Burrow every day, twice on Sunday, and it's not really close. But there's one more trade. I didn't put it on. I didn't put it on the show sheet. It was an interesting one because we talked about Hopkins and what to do. Or I'm sorry, wasn't about Hopkins. This is one actually. We put out a tweet from the timeline account and asked about trades involving the 101, and someone said that they just traded for the 101 yesterday, and they gave up the 201, Kareem Hunt, and Julian Edelman. And this is a 12-team Superflex tight end premium. My personal opinion, this guy got a steal. In a Superflex, we just talked about this. I'm sorry, and I didn't say who it was from, so that's my fault. FF Dynasty Papa at FF Dynasty Papa. He got Joe Burrow for the 201, Kareem Hunt, and Julian Edelman in a super flex. Again, I think this might be a move where you turn around in April and sell the 101 for Dalvin Cook, the 101 for, Chris Godwin, and you kind of laugh it all the way, to the bank. But what do you think? 101 for 201, Kareem Hunt and Julian Edelman.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to believe in Kareem Hunt there.
Right.
I mean, which he very well could end up being that. He could end up being a top 10 running back.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I think you're breaking even.
Right.
So, and that's saying that you're at least getting another year out of Edelman at 80% of his production from this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the most you can hope for is breaking even on that trade.
Right.
And there's so much downside on that. Edelman could not play anymore because of health issues, and maybe Brady leaves and Edelman doesn't want to deal with it. So you might get 0 out of him. And, a 201, it's a good pick, but there's no guarantee that the player you select there is going to hit. And Kareem Hunt could kick somebody else, and then all of a sudden you lost a round in a really good draft for nothing. So there's a lot of risk, and I don't think there's enough upside to counteract the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this trade, and we've been seeing some insane trades for the 101 or trade offers for the 101, and to see that someone, maybe the offer was sent to them, or maybe they reached out and inquired about what the 101 would cost, giving up the 201, Kareem Hunt, Julian Edelman in a super flex. You didn't even have to give up a quarterback to get a quarterback, which is kind of crazy to me. But, such is life. So, that's the last of our tweets for this week. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about our man, Dynasty Outhouse. So next week, next Wednesday, 9:00, we'll be here again. You'll see our two beautiful faces. But there'll be a third face, and it's going to be Dynasty Outhouse. He has, given his time. We appreciate it. We've been wanting him to come on for a while. I'm in a couple of leagues with him. We both listen to the pod.
He's good people.
He's good people, and he's given us the time to come on our show here, and we're going to talk trades. So if you're listening to the pod, send us your trade tweets. What trades have you been making?
And also, we're going on Trade Addicts next Monday, so tune in there. And if you don't listen to Trade Addicts, look up Trade Addicts and start listening to them. Outhouse and Hard do a great job.
Yeah, both guys, super smart, super entertaining. I actually just wrapped up listening to their show from this week today at work while I was working. They're good, man. They come at it from the trade angle, but they know what they're talking about. They're real smart, real entertaining. Like Bill said, if you're not listening to them, subscribe right now. If you're listening to us on the pod, we're almost done. Subscribe right now. Subscribe while you're listening to us. You can multitask. You have your phone out, bust it out, subscribe. You won't regret it. They're a vital part of my preparation every year for fantasy and dynasty. Just do it, and we'll be on there. They're coming on here. We're excited, So, on that note, we're gonna wrap this thing up. We appreciate you. If you were in the live stream, thank you. We appreciate it. Remember to subscribe and click the bell so when we go live on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast, we appreciate it. Tell your friends. If your friends ask you, "Oh, where can we find these guys?" We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. We're on Podbean. We're on Google Play. You're listening to us. Tell them whatever you're listening to us on right now. Tell them that. And if they don't have that for some reason, tell them all the other places they can find us. We appreciate everyone who downloads. Remember, subscribe. Leave a rate and review if your podcast directory allows you to. Every little bit helps. So on that note, we are out of here. Take it away, Bill.
Late.